G'day, I'm Owen, and you've joined this week's episode of The Pub Test. And yes, we are continuing the series on Jack the Ripper. We have a very fascinating one this week. Now, we've already covered James Kelly as a suspect. Well, this time we're looking at Joseph Barnett. Now, unlike James Kelly, he had no affiliation to Mary Kelly, one of the victims, though they shared the same last name. But Joseph Barnett knew Mary Kelly very, very well. And remember, she's the last official victim of Jack the Ripper. But it wasn't until about 1970, a long time after these events, that people started suggesting that he was a serious suspect. Why did they do so? Is it credible? Well, let's put it to the pub test. Let's go. So Joseph Barnett was born in 1858 and had a fairly normal existence for back then. The father worked on the docks as a fish porter, which, as I understand, there's a bit of debate exactly what was involved in that, but it's effectively moving and selling fish. Some people say also cleaning fish, as in filleting and gutting them. And that will come up again, and it is a little bit important to this story. But at the age of 6, Joseph's father passed away. And we don't know how long his mother stayed around, but it wasn't long, but she soon took off. And that seemed to have happened quite a lot back in those days, and possibly understandably, because it was hard for women to get work. How are you going to raise these children? You might be better off going out on your own. As hard as it is for us to try and fathom that type of concept, it happened a lot back then. So there had to have been reasons as to why women would abandon the families if there was no breadwinner around. But it seems the kids really stuck together. And Joseph was raised by his siblings. And all the brothers moved in also to the fish porter work. Now, a fish porter wasn't just a labourer. You needed a license to be a fish porter. And so the records show that Joseph became a licensed fish porter. It was in 1887, though, that Joseph met Mary Kelly, and they moved in together. As we've said before, things were difficult living in Whitechapel at the time, and they did move around to various lodging places until eventually the last place they lived together was 13 Miller's Court in Dorset Street. Now, if you're familiar with the Ripper cases, you'd know that 13 Miller's Court is the location where Mary Kelly lost her life and was supposedly the last official victim of Jack the Ripper. Now, Joseph Barnett is just a regular guy, but naturally the police take him in for questioning because they had quite an argument prior to her death. Now, allegedly, they'd argued over the fact that Mary was allowing prostitutes in to use the house. And he wasn't happy with that. They had a quarrel to the point where a window got broken. And then, not long after, she's found dead. So, of course, the police would take the boyfriend in, have those conversations. They questioned him for 4 hours. But then, they let him go. And it wasn't until 1970 that he became a possible suspect. But let's consider Mary Kelly's demise on its own, not as part of Jack the Ripper cases. And it would raise some questions in our mind. Why all of a sudden did the police list her as a victim of Jack the Ripper? She was found not in the street, but inside a house. She was inside a locked bedroom. So that raises the question, did someone have the key and lock the door? Or was somehow the door lock been able to manipulate it some other way? See, it didn't really point to a third party. It really points to someone that would know the person and also know the house. But why would Joseph Barnett go to such extremes to kill Mary? Because from all reports, he was deeply in love with this person. Well, again, he fell onto some pretty difficult times. He'd met Mary and he was employed, but then he lost his job. There's varying reports of why he lost his job as a fish porter. Perhaps it was because of theft. But that put financial strain on the couple, and so Mary returned to working as a prostitute. This upset Joseph a lot. But even if he was furiously angry and totally lost it, and did do the unthinkable to this person that he is supposed to have really, really loved, why did the police not arrest him and put him away? The evidence would have been there. Why did it look like a Jack the Ripper crime? Well, they're saying the telltale signs were pretty well much all the same. But interestingly, if we looked at the descriptions of eyewitnesses who people say they saw a particular person, this Joseph Barnett fits the bill. Around 30. Has a mustache. White. So, there is something there. But surely he would not have had anything to do with the 4 other previous victims. Well, see, this is where a very interesting theory came out about this man, Joseph Barnett. And it is well worth considering. People will say that he, in his mind, decided to scare Mary straight. How could he do that? By going out and finding other women in that line of work and viciously murdering them. So if Mary was continuing down that path, she'd go, oh, I'm scared and I don't want to do this anymore. And this would sort of line up to be true. Just imagine for a moment, Joseph, he goes, okay, I'll go out, and he kills one person. That didn't work. So he kills a second person. It still doesn't work. So then he kills 2 people on the same night. And he still hasn't got the result that he wanted. So what does he do? In a rage, in a fit, knowing that nothing's going to change, he takes Mary's life. And what adds further weight to this person as a suspect is the precision of the murders. See, some people have been accused, but their knifemanship would be brought into question. But if a fish porter was involved in filleting and gutting fish, they are very skilled in using knives. And would also have access to some very good knives. And wouldn't be caught in suspicion moving around at night with knives. So it is conceivable. The police also found ginger beer bottles at the scene, and people later looked at some of the Dear Boss letters. We haven't touched on them yet, but we'll be getting to them soon. But one of the Dear Boss letters referred to storing some red stuff in a ginger beer bottle to write one of the letters. And he was referring to the blood of someone. And the FBI did what do they call a psychological profile, or a profile of who Jack the Ripper could be. And if you find that and read it, you'd think it sort of fits the bill. I'll just read you some of the things that this profile said it would be. See, some of the profiles was a male aged between 28 to 36. Well, he ticks that box. Well, as a child, he would have an absent or passive father. Joseph lost his father when he was 6 years old, so he did have an absent father. It's also suggested that they would have a profession where they could be cutting things, like something that could get rid of these tendencies for them. Well, if he was involved in chopping up fish, that would also tick the box. They said that Jack the Ripper would either stop the crimes when he was caught or getting very close to being caught. Well, Joseph was questioned for 4 hours. And if the intention was to scare Mary straight, it would make sense that the crimes would end when she lost her life, because there was no need for him to continue on doing this anymore. And also that there would be some type of defect that would frustrate you or cause anger and build up, like some personal defect. And if he did have a speech impediment and that caused him those problems, well, then also he would tick the box. So, should he be really high up on this list? Because it seems there was a motive. He had the ability. He had the opportunity. He fits the profile. Well, firstly, the ginger beer bottles. I live in Australia. We drink ginger beer. There's a famous ginger beer, Bundaberg ginger beer. If you ever get your hands on it, give it a go. I am not sponsored by them, but it's a good beverage. If you raided most houses in Australia, you'll probably find a ginger beer bottle. So the fact that they found some meant he probably just enjoyed ginger beer. So I would throw that out as any evidence. They didn't find blood in a ginger beer bottle. The psychological profile, or the whatever profile that the FBI did, you could, and I live in a small town, you could go to the local supermarket and you could probably round up every white male in the place, separate them by ages, and you could easily fit most of them, whether it be an absent father, whether they've got some weird tendency, some weird problem in their life. And you can say, well, that has to be them. That would fit the bill. But that doesn't really point to much. Though it is said that Catherine Eddowes did suspect Joseph Barnett of being Jack the Ripper, and actually gave that information to somebody that he heard about, and that's why she was killed, to silence her as a witness, because maybe she saw the first crime. That is speculation, but it has been raised as a potential thing. There are other points that people say, well, you know, what about the fact one of these letters had Irish language in them and he was of Irish descent? Yeah, we could keep going through lots of information. Now, some people point to a string of other things about an envelope being found of his near one of the crime scenes, the escape route of the double event, and how he could have easily got down to Miller's Court and even washed his hands in a fountain on the way through. Yet this could apply to many different people, many different situations, and so I don't think that that really locks him in. And the other part which raises doubts in my mind, and again, if you have more information, put it in the comments and we can talk about it, but he regained his porter's license after these events. Like, I think 1906 was the first official record where he was listed again as a fish porter, and that was a license thing. So he just can't claim that title. And it also shows that it seems, now I say appears because there's no real record, but he may have married. He was definitely living with someone of the same last name. So it would suggest that he just lived as he lived his life before these events, before he got involved with Mary Kelly. Just a very simple existence. Whilst we can't rule this person out, because there would still be some questions to answer, just in my mind, he's not top of the list. He's in the top 5 at the moment, because we've only discussed 4 suspects. 2 of them we can pretty well much eliminate. I think, though, James Kelly would be above him at the moment. Of course, if you have information, put it in comments and we can have a discussion on it, because there's more evidence out there on most of these. But the overall feeling I get is that it wasn't him. At least not as much as I would think James Kelly. And not the solution I actually think the actual truth is. But as we go through, we can keep looking at this and discussing it, and maybe my opinion will change as we do this. But that brings us to the end of this week's episode of The Pub Test. As always, do the likes, do the subscribes, check out the books, and we will see you on the next intriguing case of The Pub Test.